So we've been out looking for properties and you found the perfect one to buy. This is your dream home. And after scouring the internet and scouring all the listings that I send to you, this is the home. You then ask this question: how do I know if I'm making a good offer? This question to me comes up all the time, whether it's your first home or your fifth home that you're buying, and whether you're in Kansas City or you're relocating to Kansas City and purchasing, this question gets asked more than any other question. So today's video, I'm going to be walking you through how to evaluate the list price, decide how much to offer, and go through some of the factors that will matter behind the scenes when you're making that final decision on what to make the offer for. Hi, my name is Anita Cordell, and I make videos about all things Kansas City, what it's like to work here, play here, eat here, sleep here, and I even talk about the weather. I'm also a licensed real estate agent, both on the Kansas side and the Missouri side, and I help people just like you buy, sell, relocate, and invest right here in our amazing city. So today we're going to be talking about one of the most popular questions that I get when I'm helping buyers purchase a home, and that is, how do I know that my offer is a good offer? So we're going to go through some of these factors. Now, the first factor that I'm going to talk about is price. Is the price that they're asking for on this dream home that I have, is it a good one? Well, that's a fair question. So let's talk about how they determined what that price is, some of the reasons why I don't always know, especially if it's not my listing. But before you can decide whether or not you want to make an offer for X or Y, you really got to know whether or not the asking price of that listing is a fair market value price. Is it fair? Is it something that you would be comfortable making an offer on? And that's where comparables come in. I call them comps, and they come into play and can be very important on that. So a really good agent, like yours truly, is going to provide you with comparables before you make an offer. So what are comparables? Comparables are when an agent will pull together the recently sold homes that meet the criteria of the property that you are looking for. So some factors that will be pulled into this data would include the size of the property. It's going to look at how many bedrooms your property has versus the data that I pull, how many bathrooms, what the bathroom count is. It'll look at square footage. Sometimes it'll pull how many garage spaces there are and, compare it to a property that's very similar. Also, the comparables that I pull will include the same school district of your property, the neighborhood, subdivision, and then also to the condition. So this is key when you're looking at the price of the property that you're wanting to make an offer on versus the comparables that have recently sold. So say, for instance, the property that you have decided upon is in tip-top shape, everything is updated, and there's some comparables that are really about the same size of your property and the same location, but there's a lot of updates that are needed. Well, priced a little bit more than the comparables out there that are at. We're also looking at lot sizes. So say, for instance, your property is on acreage, and some comparables don't have as big of a size of lot that you have, then that's also taken into consideration. And believe it or not, there are some people who would prefer to have a smaller lot on a corner than a little bit bigger lot within the subdivision that they're looking into. Another thing to look at is amenities. So say in Kansas City, there's a certain area that has properties that have basements, but they're not able to be finished. We have certain pockets in our city that have that scenario because the basements are so old, you can't really finish them out. But then other areas, you have a finished basement. So you'll want to be able to have the comparables that show whether or not the properties have a finished basement, how much of the basement is finished. Then there's other factors, amenities such as, does the property have a pool? Is there a new roof? Is the fence updated? There's all kinds of things that will need to be looked at as far as updates and amenities when it comes to one factor, and that is price. A pro tip on this would be, if you have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home with all new appliances, a new roof, it's got a backyard that's got this amazing oasis with a hot tub and an entertainment space, a place where people just want to spend time and have events out there. And everything about this property is absolutely pristine and perfect. Well, that property might actually be worth more than a larger home that needs, say, $30,000 in renovations. So this is why comparables are so important. You don't want to just focus on the size of the home. You want to look at a multitude of other factors, and that is where I come in to help you with that. So obviously, the very first step in determining if the home is priced in line with the market is using those comparables. I do this all the time, whether it's properties that are in the Northland or whether there's properties that are in Overland Park or Blue Springs or Lee Summit. Anywhere in the metropolitan area, I can do this for you. All right, so let's talk about how much you should offer. Let's say the property that you are wanting to make an offer on has been determined, and we've looked at all the comparables and have done a great job of listing the home at a really good, reasonable price. So the question then falls on you. Should you offer more? Should you offer less? Or should you offer right at what they're asking for? After all of this, there's still more factors to consider. And the biggest factor right here is market conditions. So when I discuss market conditions with my buyers, I always have to explain to them whether or not we are in a seller's market, a stable market, or a buyer's market. So what does that mean? A seller's market is, say, going to be something totally different, especially if there's low inventory, than a buyer's market. If you are trying to purchase a property in a seller's market with low inventory, then you may need to offer at least the list price or more, and sometimes you might even have to waive certain contingencies when you're making the offer. So for instance, about 5 years ago when we were in COVID and the pricing and the low inventory was at an all-time high, people would come and we would go and look at properties and we would go out. My buyers would decide on which property they wanted to make an offer on. But the problem is there are all these other buyers in a seller's market waiting for a property to come on the market. And due to the fact that there's low inventory, there's not that many houses that come on the market, but yet there's more buyers out here that are wanting to purchase a home. And so what happens is you get one house on the market, all these buyers come here, they run and make an offer on that property, and the best offer wins, basically. So low inventory in a seller's market, all these buyers, makes it really difficult to make an offer that's lower than the list price. And you have to compete and you have to actually negotiate on other terms, which I've got a multitude of other terms that you can negotiate with. So if you are feeling like you're competing with other buyers, I've had buyers win the bid if they listen to me, hands down, so many times. So when you're in a seller's market with low inventory and you've got high competition, you're going to have to decide how you want to make an offer, which is going to be different than if you're in a buyer's market when there's lots of homes on the market and fewer buyers to compete with. You're basically competing with the sellers at that point because you're wanting to get the best deal, and oftentimes there's a lot more negotiating room that takes place here in Kansas City. The market conditions is not the only thing to look at. You got to also look at the days on market. So what does that mean? If a property comes up on the market, it's only been on the market for, say, 2 days, then you can expect competition already, whether you're in a buyer's market or a seller's market. But if you are looking at a property and your dream home has been sitting on the market for, say, 45 plus days, there's probably a whole lot of flexibility and negotiating power upon that. Days on market can actually contribute to what your offer should or could be. Here's another factor to consider, and that is seller motivation. And you're probably asking yourself, well, how do I find out the seller motivation? I don't know who the seller is. Well, a good agent like myself is going to ask the right questions to the listing agent. My contact information is in the description below. And so if you are ready, whether it's in 9 days or in a year, and you're looking to move to Kansas City or purchase here, go ahead and reach out to me. My contact information is below. And there's also even a link where you can click on that link and it'll go right to my calendar and we can set up an appointment to discuss your real estate goals. Back to seller motivation. A great agent is going to contact the listing agent and start to ask some really key questions. Questions like, why are the sellers selling? What's happening in their life that is determining this? And how quickly do they need to sell? Well, so for instance, you might have somebody that needs to sell very, very fast, and they are starting a new job in 2 weeks, and they're dropping their price on their listing and haven't had an offer yet. And those are motivating circumstances for the seller to determine, where can we go at? We have to sell this home, and we're starting to get stressed about it. So some of those questions can get obtained from the listing agent, and I will ask those questions on behalf of my buyers so that it can help determine how much the offer should be. Another question that I like asking is, has there been any other offers? This context actually matters, and you might not necessarily know that it does, but it really does, because a seller who is relocating, like I said, to a new job, and they may need to be gone in a week and a half or 2 weeks, they might just accept a lower offer just to move faster. And this is why it's really important to be already underwritten. And what do I mean by that? Well, a great agent like myself is going to vet out the lenders that I refer to my buyers. My lenders do what's called a fully underwritten pre-approval. That means that what they'll do is they'll go ahead and pre-approve you, but they'll go ahead and get all of the documentation that they need, send you through underwriting, and they can close on a loan within a week and a half to 2 weeks usually. So you are positioned just in case somebody comes along that needs to sell their home fast, they haven't had an offer yet, and it's been on the market for a little while, and they really need to close quick. Well, you're in a situation to where you can close quick because you're fully underwritten. Another situation could be that somebody is building a home and the home is supposed to be done in, say, 4 months. Then you can potentially put an offer in that would attract that seller so that they know that you would be willing to wait 4 months. There's just some factors that the seller would need to provide to help you make a really good offer that would win the bid. We still aren't done with how to determine whether or not you're making a good offer. Here are some good questions that a smart buyer is going to ask. These are golden questions that don't always get asked, but they can really make or break your buying decision when you are making this offer. So my first good question for a smart buyer is, what is included in the sale? So what I mean by that, are appliances staying? What about the window treatments in that really nice house? They just put up these window treatments. Are they included in the sale? What about outdoor sheds and outdoor yard art? Are those items included in this sale as well? Well, what about furniture? Would the seller be willing to sell some of their furniture? What about the lawnmowers? Some sellers will actually sell their lawnmower or attach it to the contract at no value. So those are some really smart questions that a good buyer will ask, is what's included in the sale. Another one is, what are the estimated closing costs? Now, I have actually done a whole video about what closing costs are, who pays for them. So you can click on the link below, find that video, because closing costs are not just a little portion of your home buying purchase. In Kansas City, closing costs for buyers typically range anywhere between 2 to 6% of the purchase price. And just on a high level view, they include lender fees, appraisal costs, they'll include title insurance, tax prorations, recording and escrow fees, and other processing fees as well. But I break all that out in this other video. Another thing to ask is, how old are the major systems of the home? This includes HVAC, water heater, roof. What about foundation repairs? Has there ever been any foundation repairs? And if they were, is the warranty still on there, or are they holding up? And how has the yard been maintained? Are they putting in fill dirt so that the foundation doesn't have any more issues? You don't want to move into a property and then shell out thousands of dollars right away because there's something that needs to be fixed. So here in Kansas City, we have what's called a seller's disclosure. And if you use an agent, they're going to provide this for you. And so I always ask for that seller's disclosure before we even make an offer. I get that seller's disclosure over to a buyer. And what this is it's a form that the sellers fill out. It's about 8 pages here in Kansas City. And the seller will fill that out and answer a lot of those questions. Now, sometimes the seller doesn't have all of the details. And so say, for instance, you're wanting to purchase a property and there is a widower and she has no idea, some of the maintenance and some of the details that went into, putting together the property. She might not have any of those receipts. She doesn't know what her husband did, and it's a sad situation. You might not know the details of those major systems. However, this is why it's so important to do a home inspection. And I have done a video about home inspections, what you can expect, why it's important. And so go ahead and watch that video if you want as well, because you don't want to move in without at least having a home inspection of yourself and making sure that you know what you're purchasing. A home inspection comes after the offer is made. So we're still on the offer. So bonus tips on how to make a smart offer is 1, get pre-approved and go with one of my lenders so that you are not just pre-approved, but you are fully underwritten and you are ready and you'll be a more confident buyer. That alone can make you competitive above another offer. It really shows how serious you are when you get fully underwritten. Now, another part of making a smart offer is to try your best to be flexible on a closing date. Now, I understand that that's not always the case. So say you're moving into Kansas City and you've got a job offer and you have to close on this specific date, and say it just doesn't work. Well, you still could probably be a little bit flexible. You could get into a short-term rental if you needed to, or you can try and negotiate with other factors, with maybe your job or whatever. If you can meet some of the seller's ideal timelines, then that will be a win-win for both of you. Another pro tip about offers that I love, some real estate agents do not like these, but I love escalation clauses. I have had multiple buyers win the bid by using an escalation clause. And in a competitive situation, which would be a seller's market with low inventory, this lets you increase your offer automatically if another bid comes in. And so it lets you tell the seller, look, I'm going to make this offer and it's a little bit above your asking price right now, but I'm willing to go up to here if another offer comes in because I really want this home and I'm willing to go up to this price and make sure that, I win the bid, right? Also too, the question would come in about the escalation clause is, if you go higher and you're willing to go up to a certain point, you have to also make sure that the home appraises for the purchase price that you are wanting to get under contract for. And if it doesn't, you might have to do an appraisal gap and bring some cash to close. And that's a whole other conversation in a competitive market. But consider an escalation clause. I love them. I've had multiple buyers win bids because we use escalation clauses. But for whatever reason, there's some agents out there that don't like them. And of course, talking about your local agent, every single neighborhood in Kansas City is different. Every subdivision, every city, whether it's Brookside or Liberty or Lee Summit or Overland Park or Prairie Village, they're all different. And they all have some unique DNAs to it. That's why you need somebody who's local here, who knows the area. I've been living in Kansas City for most of my life, over 30 years, and I have been selling real estate for a very long time, and so I understand. And I've also lived on both the Kansas side and the Missouri side, so I have a unique perspective when it comes to trying to help buyers buy a home and win the bid. All right, so let's wrap up. You asked the question, what makes a good offer on a home? Well, unfortunately, I don't have the nailed down answer to that question. And the reason why is because there's so many factors that it's going to depend on. It's going to depend on price, where the location is, the property itself, the market, and most importantly, your goals. My job is to walk alongside you, crunch the numbers, show you the comparables, help detail out all of the differences between those comps and help you compare the property to the one that you are wanting to purchase, and then help you craft up the smartest offer to win the bid. All right, so if you found this video helpful and you understand that there's a whole lot of things that we have to take into consideration to answer the question, how am I going to make a good offer and is my offer good? Go ahead and give me a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, and for more Kansas City details, go ahead and click the bell so that you get notified first when I post a new video. If you're thinking about buying or selling, call Anita Cordell for the questions about the process. And again, you can always click on that link and set up a time for us to talk about your real estate goals. And until next time, keep dreaming big and house hunting smart.